What up, y'all? Welcome to Durrett Steak. For the interesting fact of the day, I'm not sure if you saw the game last night, but Kevin Durrett did a historic performance. One of the only four players in postseason history to go for at least 45 plus points, 15 plus rebounds, and 10 plus assists. So that was an incredible effort by KD last night. But before we're talking about that game, I want to go over a bunch of bombshells that happened this morning. So let's get started. So this morning, they announced on, according to multiple reports, that Kawhi told his teammates he will not be playing in Game 5. And the reports say that he could potentially be done for the rest of the series. So now there are many thoughts that can kind of go through your mind at this point, whether you're a Jazz fan, Clippers fan, or just NBA fan in general, when you hear this news. For me, it's simple, and not just as a Jazz fan, but as a fan in general. Congrats to Utah. You will win the battle of the health competition. As I said yesterday, I thought Conley needed to be back in order for the Jazz to pull this series out. And I still think they want him back and could use him back, I mean, if he's going to play like, Harden did last night, then yeah, maybe I can understand why you're holding him out. But if he's ready to go, he's still got to play, in my opinion. But I feel like if Kawhi is not just out this game only, but ends up being out of the rest of the series, and that's where the Jazz are going to win. If they can't beat the Clippers without Kawhi, then the Jazz don't deserve to get to the conference finals anyways. Now, the thing that helps the Clippers is that Paul George is playing at his best level right now in the playoffs ever. He's doing really well right now. And then also, since you are one of not the deepest team in the league, you can have a bunch of players step up. Now, and I feel like that can be the case for them offensively, but I feel like you are going to miss Kawhi's defensive presence, even though Clippers have plenty of, capable defenders and Terrence Mann and Patrick Beverly and Paul George. So they have defenders, but Kawhi, is a different animal in that regard. So even if, Marcus Morris Sr. and Reggie Jackson combined for 40 points, if they can't stop Mitchell because Kawhi's not going to be there, then it ain't going to matter. So I feel like this is going to be the ultimate factor in why the Jazz can potentially move on now, whether Mike Conley comes back or not. And like we've seen it with many series, it's like, the Suns are more healthy than the Lakers, therefore they win that series. The Suns are more healthy than the Nuggets, therefore they win that series. Just a bunch of injuries are deciding these playoffs. And it's interesting that now there's going to be 8 All-Stars to miss at least one playoff game, within the playoffs for that year, and that's going to be the most in NBA history. So when I was talking yesterday about you need to put an asterisk on this playoffs, that's the reason why right there. So the other big bombshell was Chris Paul is out indefinitely for the health and safety protocols. So this is news, and it's kind of harder to dissect, and here's why. Well, let me first let's just go over what we do know. So what we do know is that without Chris Paul, the Suns are not that good. We saw this in games 2 and 3 against the Lakers last round, where CP3 was like severely limited. The Suns weren't that good, and Lakers won both game 2 and game 3. They were lucky to win game 1, but then in game 2 and game 3, it's just like, with CP3 limited, Suns did not do very well. And let's face it, Suns, without CP3, they're a borderline playoff team at best. Like the bubble show last year, they're a border playoff team last year. So that's kind of what they are again this year, to a degree. So it all depends on how long Chris Paul's going to be out here. That's what's hard to dissect. Because if he tested positive, then he's going to be out for a while. But I mean, I feel like they would say he tested positive if that were the case. So I don't think he's out because of that. It's just because he was in close contact with someone with COVID, probably. And if that's the case, I think he's supposed to be in quarantine or something for like 10 days. Which if that's the case, then he should be back, most likely game 3 now. So, let's say the Jazz advance and the Suns go 0-2. Well, you're going to be back in Phoenix, you can down 0-2. It's like you can still potentially win the series, but is that too much of a deficit to overcome at that point? I'm not sure. Because what's interesting is that and definitely, in my opinion, it definitely means until further notice. So he could potentially be out the whole Western Conference Finals. I'm not sure how long he's going to be out for. That's what's interesting here. I wish they had a certain amount of days they could put attached to it, but I'm not sure. And what's interesting is not only is he just out, but it's like he won't be there, and therefore he can't be there, at least on the bench, to give that team leadership, to the young players, which The Suns desperately need his leadership, so that's going to be a big hole to fill. And what's sad is that, I mean, I had the Suns, actually winning the conference finals, whether it's the Jazz or the Clippers that came out, just because of what I've seen from them. But now it's just like, not going to do that anymore. If the Chris Paul can't come back at all next series, then it might be a sweep. But if he can, then yeah, he can maybe put up a fight depending on when he comes back. But if he missed the first couple games, I feel like it'd be too much to overcome at that point. So once again, there's been another NBA firing, and the Pelicans have decided just after one season to fire um, Steph Van Gundy. It's pretty interesting because we saw the Pacers do this after 1 year with the coach they hired. They weren't afraid to pull the plug after one season, and I agree with the Pelicans here. I mean, Steph Van Gundy, he was a okay head coach back then, Magic and Dwight Howard back a decade ago. But like I feel like his game doesn't translate to today's game type of thing. I didn't think the Pelicans improved at all, so that's fine with it. Now, as far as who my replacement should be, I think Jason Kidd be a good fit here. I know I've said this for a couple places, but I think he'll be a good fit here because what the Pelicans have is they have a lot of young, good pieces around, and they could use more development, which Jason Kidd's good at, and also Jason Kidd's better defensive coach, which Pelicans suck at defense, so therefore they could use that. Now they go get a retread coach like a D'Antoni or something. I mean, D'Antoni's out might be interesting, but like that wouldn't be the smart move by them, especially since they just got a retread coach last year and they already realized it didn't work out. So you got to go Jason Kidd here, or go someone kind of new, in my opinion, maybe like a Chauncey Billups or something like that. So the game last night was interesting. There were a couple takeaways I have from the game last night. One is that KD is the best offensive player in the playoffs right now. Even better than LeBron James was in the playoffs in his prime. No, I'm not saying Kevin Durant is a better player than LeBron James. I'm just saying offensively wise, KD's better. There are people who are going to say that Harden should not have played last night. If they would have lost, then I would have agreed with you. But since they won, it was actually the smart move, and here's why. Yeah, he only scored 5 points, but in a close game like it was, 5 points makes a difference. And yeah, he was sloppy, but he did have 6 rebounds and 7 assists or something like that. So he was still helping out his teammates and getting involved and contributing in a big way. And I feel like that was the difference in the game right there. And then the third takeaway is that, Grant Hill says on the broadcast, and then even CJ McCollum said something to the extent of it on Twitter. It's just like the Bucks' defensive strategy was mind-boggling in my opinion. It's like I know the Nets have a bunch of shooters, and especially when the Nets are at home, they're more deadly shooters. Like you saw Jeff Green going off last night for like one of having his best games ever. Period. And then like Landry Shamet going off and stuff like that. But when you have a player that's getting hot or on fire as much as KD is, you gotta double team him. So I was surprised that the Bucks didn't really do that much at all last night. And then if you're going to say, okay, well, I'm too stubborn to do the double team, well then put a first All NBA defensive team player on him in Giannis and have Giannis guard him, not Chris Middleton. PJ Tucker, depends on how they're calling the game, since they weren't calling the game in his favor last night. That's why I would put Giannis on him. I know my exert Giannis' effort on the offensive end, but still, you got to put the best defensive player on KD at that point, and the Bucks didn't do it. So if that's Giannis' fault for not stepping up and taking on that assignment, shame on you. You got to do that. Or if it was Budenholzer's fault for specifically designing it that way, then that's why he might get fired. Now, I do think the Bucks will get Game 6 at home. KD, after playing 48 minutes last night, will be tired. Harden is clear 100%. The low players, as we've seen, have not been good at all at Milwaukee. So I think the Bucks win Game 6, and this will go Game 7. So it'll be interesting to see when it gets Game 7, the Bucks made the right adjustments. Because if Kyrie's still out and Harden's still 100% by Game 7, then the Bucks can still win this series. They just have to be smart here and stop KD. Or not stop KD, limit KD. Okay, so the All-NBA teams were announced yesterday. So for the first team, it was Steph Curry, Luka Doncic, Kawhi Leonard, Giannis, Nikola Jokic. The second team was Damian Lillard, Chris Paul, LeBron James, Julius Randle, and Joel Embiid. And the third team was Kyrie Irving, Bradley Beal, Jimmy Butler, Paul George, and Rudy Gobert. Now, here's some players that you can argue for that were left out, in my opinion. And keep in mind, for me, if you're out at least half the season, if not more, then you're off. You're off the list, and that's understandable. Or if you just regress so much. And then obviously, if a player's progressed so much, they could potentially include on this list. But for me, it's just Julius Randle, top 10 NBA player based off this season. I don't really think so. I know he had a good year and all that. He definitely deserved to win, most improved player, stuff like that. But it's just I don't really see that. So KD is, just, as we know, second best player, and I feel like he played in enough games. I didn't feel like he missed more than half the season. I thought, well, he played enough games to get on this list. Now you could say, for example, LeBron James is on second team. That's because he missed all the games. So if you wanted to put KD on second team or something, that would have been fine with me because of the amount of games he missed. But to not have him on the top 15 at all here is mind-boggling. Same can be said for James Harden, who I thought this was his best year ever when he did play, because of the way he's, being more of a team player and all that versus, Houston where it's just shoot, shoot, shoot. So I thought he should be on there. Another snub, in my opinion, was Donovan Mitchell. I mean, you have Jimmy Butler on here over Donovan Mitchell. Really? Jimmy Butler missed at least half the season, so he would automatically be off the list and should be off the list. But not only that, when he did play, he wasn't that good this year. Especially since he's more of a postseason player. And even this postseason, you saw he was horrible this year. You just did not have it this year. And Donovan Mitchell was the best player on the best team in the NBA this year. For any team, if that's the case, you should be on the All-NBA just automatically. And the fact that you were on it, that's just pathetic. Tatum, you can make an argument for him on this list, but because he had COVID, and then it took him a long time to finally get back to where he's supposed to be, that's why I'm fine with him off the list this time. Williamson, you can make the case for John here, but something that's interesting is that since Steph Curry was the only player to not make the NBA playoffs barely and be on this list, that's why I feel like Zion Williamson didn't make the list here. Devin Booker, similar with Mitchell, is the best scorer on the second best team in the NBA. He should be on this list here, but for some reason I feel like he got snubbed. Westbrook, he helped the Wizards reach to the playoffs while recording triple doubles most every game, so he definitely could have been on this list, especially over his teammate Bradley Beal. But I'm fine with him off. And then Trae Young, he was right to be off the list as of right now, but I feel like he could be on this list in the future. Of course, there are other names I'm leaving out, but those are the media players that come to mind for me. So for me, here's the easy way on how to determine the All-NBA team from now on. Now, you do have to keep positions in mind, but just list the top 15 NBA players, and if a player was out for more than half the season, like I said earlier, or they regressed so much to where they deserve to be off the list, then that's fine, by the way. Just do it like that. So here is my All-NBA team list. First team, Steph Curry, Luka Doncic, Kevin Durrett, LeBron James, Joel Embiid. Bam. Second team, Damian Lillard, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, Anthony Davis, Nikola Jokic. Third team, Chris Paul, Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, Paul George, and then Rudy Gobert. Now, like I mentioned earlier, it's position-based. Obviously, Gobert is not a top 15 NBA player, but because you need a center there, that's why he's there. So as far as names I left off, that are top 15 caliber players, you got Kyrie Irving, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Russell Westbrook, Trae Young, Zion Williamson, like we mentioned earlier. They're all worthy of top 15 conversation here. So I can understand if you want to put some of them in, but when you look at this list, it's just if you're a normal NBA analyst, it's just holes do I have? There's really not much holes, and that's a good list there. Now you could debate, who's first team versus second team, stuff like that. But as far as the top 15 in general, there, it's just that's a pretty good list. Hardly any arguments you can make there, and see how easy that was to do. That's how it should be every single year. Okay, so thank you very much for listening to my podcast today. Please subscribe to my channel and tell everyone about me. Thank you very much, and y'all have a wonderful day.